The practical takeaway is twofold. For what you already have, audit your site, prune what adds little to no value, revamp what's gone stale, and make sure every page would pass your own quality bar today. For what you create going forward, set clear editorial standards before you scale. Clearly define what good looks like and build editorial checkpoints into your workflow, and treat quality as a non-negotiable, not something you'll get to once the content is live. I'm Astley Cervania, and this is SEO in 2026 Additional Insights.
Astley, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
Make sure that content quality is high across every page on your website. This matters now more than ever because AI has made it easier to scale content output, and there are many teams doing exactly that, publishing more faster. But what's often not keeping pace are the editorial standards and maintenance of what's already on the website, and all the attention goes into creating and shipping new content while existing pages go stale, and quality inconsistencies build up quietly in the background.
Okay, got you. So absolutely key there to make sure the content is as high quality as possible. But obviously, AI to a certain degree nowadays can produce high quality content. Is it wrong to use AI in your content at all? And how would you define quality content?
Yes, so maybe from that tip, it might sound like I'm against AI, but I'm all for it. And I think it can really help you scale content output and really speed up the content creation process. But the main problem that I see around it is that there's no editorial infrastructure or process built around it. And really, it's not a competitive advantage to have access to these tools because everyone has access to the tools as well, but it's more so in how you use them. In terms of measuring the content quality, there's a few things I would look at. The main thing from an SEO point of view is looking at the search intent. Does the content address the primary query? And does it give the visitor the answer they've been looking for? And more importantly, does it address the underlying pain point of the visitor's query? That's one. Another point is the formatting and structure. Is it easy to read and scan? Are you making use of visuals or graphics to make your content easy to digest? And is it written in a way that's easy, not just for the reader to scan, but also easy for LLMs to scan? Another point is reflecting on the reader persona. So is how you're talking about the topic going to resonate with the actual problems that the reader is dealing with? Are you mirroring their language to a degree and actually talking about the topic in a way that's relevant to them? Another important point is the angle. So is there a clear angle or POV on the topic? Have you injected subject expertise and any original points or anecdotes to reinforce and illustrate your points? And next is, how does it compare to your competitors? Is it just as detailed? Are there any specific parts of information missing? And if possible, how can you differentiate? The last thing I would look at is the next steps. So is the content actionable in terms of making it clear what the visitor needs to do next? Or are they still wondering what they need to do? Make sure that you've taken into account the possible follow-ups and that you've covered them effectively. Those are the main points I would look at editorially, but from an analytical perspective, there's still a few points that I would look at. So if you're looking at quality from a search performance perspective, anytime you've updated or revamped a page, check the organic performance using Google Search Console. So I like to look at if rankings, impressions, or click-through rates have seen any improvement at all. You should see improvement on pages you've refreshed, and new content should be meeting a higher baseline than what you were publishing before. Another point is to look at conversion and content engagement metrics. So are the pages you've improved or the newer high quality content contributing to driving more signups or leads? Attribution is a whole conversation in and of itself, but the start point is just making sure that you're tracking conversions at all, just to get an idea of how the content is making an impact on the buyer's journey.
Amazing. Okay, so that gives a lot of detail on what metrics are perhaps important and also how to structure a piece of content based upon what the user may desire in terms of information, structure, calls to action, what might resonate with them. And also you've talked about what AI search engines may like and be more likely to wish to incorporate in their own results based upon crawlability and the sense of your overall content. So a lot of great tips there. I'd still like to get a closer recommendation when it comes to when to use AI to produce the content and when to not use AI to produce the content. So are you saying that if you've done an awful lot of work in establishing your brand tone of voice, the structure of your content, the length of the content, the writing style, how you should go about something to selecting something to particularly resonate with a user, then you can perhaps pass it on to AI to create the content then? Or is human content still always best after that stage?
Yep. So that's a very good question. And it's one that I often think about. I think the biggest gap that I see really it's a really important skill. And I think that skill is being able to interview experts and to steer that conversation in a way where you're able to draw those insights. From what I found from my experience is that if you're able to sort of use AI to help synthesize that, so it could involve looking at call transcripts or meeting transcripts and using AI to help speed up the process of, okay, what are specific themes that we need to cover, or even getting ideas of commercial content to cover can be really, really effective. The most important thing when you're using AI for content and making sure that quality isn't lackluster is making sure that there are editorial checkpoints within certain times that you're using AI. So in my workflow, I use it to help speed with the outline and even with the brief as well. But after each stage, I always check myself to see what the output is. And before moving on to the next stage, it's really refining it from there and making sure that you're able to move on to the next step without anything missing. But a key part to making sure it works really well is having that editorial infrastructure set up to begin with. So a lot of that points to the tone of voice, a lot of that points to having the expert insights extracted from the interviews and using that to fuel the process. But it's really important to check at each stage when you're using AI just to make sure that the output is what you want it to be. And I'm still currently in the process of experimenting with these to see how far it can go, because at the same time, from what I've seen, there are many people who are using AI at the most simplest level of just prompting, but they're not taking into account context, or there is no editorial infrastructure built behind that, which can lead to the generic outputs and a lot of the AI slop that is coming out on the internet.
How do you know whether or not to spend your time on updating existing content on existing pages or building out new content on your website?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think from what I've seen, there's a lot of pressure to create and ship new content. And not that it's a bad idea. Programmatic content can work really well, especially if you're using AI to help scale that. But as you're scaling content output, it's always important to consider what you already currently have. It's also very important to prioritize. I would argue that it is important to prioritize maintaining your website first over building out new stuff. And the main reason being is because the content that you already have, you're more likely to see results faster because it's already there. And you can get more results from simply updating it, or if it's a page where value isn't where it should be because the content quality itself, it could be thin, or it could be generic, or it might be really outdated, then those are usually some of the first things I would look at. Look at content that is underperforming in those areas where it's outdated, thin, there's little to no value. And either the next steps from there is to revamp them or to prune them. And I've seen a lot of good results that can come from this, as opposed to focusing on building out new content. But I would really prioritize doing full content audits, ideally monthly. But for some teams, that might be more limited in terms of bandwidth. Quarterly might make more sense. But ideally, you'd want to audit what you already have and update and make sure that you don't have anything that's gone stale. And you can still build out new content while you're doing that, but just to make sure that there is a balance in terms of updating and regularly making sure that what you have on the website is fresh and meets the quality standards you have today, as opposed to it looks fine and leaving it as is. In my experience, from what I've seen, it's a common trap that happens where certain pages look fine, but the accumulation of all of those inconsistencies can lead to the algorithm updates exposing those cracks.
If you're an SEO taking over a website that's got tens of thousands of pages on it, how do you begin to identify and prioritize what content needs to be fixed first?
The first thing I would look at are the most important pages. So normally that is the landing pages, and have a look first. Does it meet the search criteria of where your ICPs are today, or is it still outdated? Check all the content that is closest to commercial value. That's where I would prioritize, and really making sure that all of them are updated and none of it has gone stale. It can be quite difficult to look at which areas of the content to prioritize when you're dealing with a website that has so many pages, but I would always look at the bottom line, so the landing pages and anything that's closest to commercial value. And from there, check any pages that have been done programmatically at scale and see what is diluting authority and what's taking up crawl budget and where you can prune content and pages. That can lead to really good results.
If a page isn't ranked and it doesn't have any obvious traffic or authority, should it be removed?
The question I like to ask myself when I'm in this scenario is, if this page was removed, is anyone going to notice? Are algorithms going to notice? Because if it's not really driving any impressions or it has no visibility whatsoever, then I would make the move to either merge it with another page where the search intent is closely related, or if there is little to no value whatsoever and it meets and it answers that question of no one would really notice that it's gone, then yes, I would delete that and make sure to add a redirect to the closest relevant page that you have.
Should there be a regular analysis done to determine what content exists, what content should be culled, what content should be improved on your website? And if so, how often should it be done? And is there any software that you would recommend to assist this process?
Yep, so that's a good question. What I would look at in terms of analyzing the pages and how often it should be done, again, it comes back down to the criteria that's kind of set, which is it adding value and is it not? And that analysis should be done. It should be done in conjunction with your content audits. So monthly normally works. If you're conducting a full website content audit, that should be taken into account. And the tool I normally use to help with this is Screaming Frog, to take a look at pages that are thin or pages that doesn't look like it's adding as much value. I'd also look at Google Search Console and just filter it by looking at the lowest performing pages and making a diagnosis from there.
Got you. Okay. So done as regularly as your content audit is done, which could be on a quarterly basis, could be on a twice a year basis or an annual basis. Just match that criteria. And Screaming Frog is the software that you utilize probably most to assist you with this process at the moment.
Yes, Screaming Frog, but I also use Google Search Console. I use Plausible as well to help with this. And I just filter it by looking at what is lowest performing or what is underperforming. By that, I mean, is it driving visibility? Does it have any clicks or impressions? Then I would also look onto Ahrefs to see if that page is ranking for any keywords or has any visibility, and then make a decision from there.
Astley, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
The practical takeaway is twofold. For what you already have, audit your site, prune what adds little to no value, revamp what's gone stale, and make sure every page would pass your own quality bar today. For what you create going forward, set clear editorial standards before you scale, clearly define what good looks like, and build editorial checkpoints into your workflow, and treat quality as a non-negotiable, not something you'll get to once the content is live.
Astley Cervania is an SEO and content strategist. Find out more over at astleycervania.com. Astley, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you very much.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at seoin2026.com.